Title: From Humility to Grace, My Journey Back to God. In the journey of life, I often find myself at crossroads, reflecting on my past and seeking a path back to grace. My story resonates with many who have experienced the highs of success and the lows of loss. It serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of humility and reliance on God. A journey from humility to pride. I began my journey in Finland with nothing but a mere $100 and a short visa. In those early days, I was vulnerable, dependent on the kindness of others, and acutely aware of my limitations. This phase mirrored the biblical principle found in Matthew 5 verse 3, which states, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." My initial humility became fertile ground for God's grace to flourish in my life. As time passed, I achieved success, finding work, gaining education, and earning respect. However, with this success came a subtle shift in focus. I began to see my achievements as products of my own strength and intelligence rather than gifts from God. Proverbs 22 verse 4 reminds us that humility is the fear of the Lord, its wages are riches and honor and life. When I forgot this truth, I risked losing sight of my reliance on God. The consequences of pride. The decline in my prayer life reflected a common struggle. As James 4 verse 6 states, God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. When I allowed pride to take root, I distanced myself from God's grace. Losing my job served as a wake-up call, a moment when I realized that self-sufficiency had led me away from divine support. In 2 Chronicles 7 verse 14, we are reminded, "If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray, then I will hear from heaven." This scripture underscored that humility and prayer are critical for receiving God's guidance and blessings. Returning to my first love. Recognizing my need for God became a powerful step toward restoration. I expressed a desire to return to a place of humility, a broken heart and a contrite spirit. Psalm 51 verse 17 tells us, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise." This is where true healing begins. As I embarked on this new chapter, I remembered that God welcomes those who seek Him earnestly. Jeremiah 29 verse 13 assures us, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." Conclusion: Embracing humility. My journey illustrates the cyclical nature of faith, how we can rise and fall but ultimately return to God's embrace through humility. As I kneel in prayer and seek His mercy once more, I hold on to the promise found in 1 Peter 5 verse 6, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that He may lift you up in due time." This renewed commitment leads me back into the fullness of God's grace, restoring both my spirit and energy for work. I embrace this opportunity for growth with an open heart, trusting that He will guide me every step of the way. A deeper reflection on humility. As I ponder this journey back to grace, I consider how humility is not merely an absence of pride but an active acknowledgement of our dependence on God. In Romans 12 verse 3, Paul writes, "For by the grace given me I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment." This verse invites me to reflect on my true position before God, recognizing that every achievement is ultimately rooted in His grace. The contrast between pride and humility is stark throughout Scripture. Proverbs 11 verse 2 teaches us that, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. It reminds me that true wisdom is found not in self-exaltation but in recognizing my need for divine guidance. The power of prayer. In moments when I feel lost or overwhelmed by my circumstances, prayer becomes my lifeline. Jesus taught us about the importance of humility in prayer when He said in Matthew 6 verse 6, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father who is unseen." This intimate communion with God allows me to lay down my burdens and receive His peace. As I seek to rebuild my relationship with God through prayer, I remember that it is not about eloquence or formality, it is about sincerity. Philippians 4 verses 6-7 encourages us with these words, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. In doing so, I invite His peace into my life, the peace that transcends understanding." The promise of restoration. God's heart is always inclined toward restoration. As I navigate this new chapter filled with uncertainty and hope, I hold fast to Isaiah 40 verse 31, which promises that those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. This assurance reminds me that while I may feel weary from my struggles, God's grace empowers me to rise again. In embracing humility and seeking God's presence earnestly through prayer and reflection, M.